Hey guys, it is me, Tanya, founder of the TNG Design Script Limited. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about representation once again. We're continuing on with the discussion around this, but more specifically, we're homing in on the idea of what happens when people aren't represented, and more specifically also the hidden costs or the impact behind that. Now, before we get stuck into this video, as always, please make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel because I share content just like this. You know that representation is one of my biggest topics simply because it's one that's near and dear to my heart, and also because it's a key thing that all brands need to be aware of, need to make sure that they are doing, and more specifically need to make sure that they are representing their audience in the right kind of a way that still suits their beliefs and standards. So in order to be able to represent your audience, in order to be able to reach out to an audience as well that really resonates with your own brand to help you to build your awareness and your visibility and so forth, you need to make sure that you're adhering to some key things. And more specifically, you need to make sure you're adhering to these key things so that you can build those better connections, so that you can build that brand awareness and equally create that community that you're actually looking for, that community of followers, that community of buyers, and that community of people who really get you, get your journey, and why or how it is that you can really help them. So please make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel once again, and stick around to the very end of this particular video as well, because I share with you how to take action on all the key things that I'm actually going to be talking about within this particular video, but also to make sure that you do so in a way that's congruent to you and your standards as well. So without further ado, folks, let's get stuck into it. So as I said, we're going to be talking about what happens when people aren't represented, and especially by way of your brand, right? What are those hidden costs? So the main hidden costs, aside from costs, could actually be the damage to your reputation. And here's why I say that. When you are not representing, or in this case, not showing a level of representation that your audience could really do with seeing more of, you are impacting the idea of them not being able to get there as well. You are impacting the idea of them not being able to see that there is a way forward. And I know you're probably thinking, but Tan, that's not my responsibility. And you're right, it's not your responsibility. However, what is your responsibility is to make sure that, you know what, all the things that you are doing within your business, within your brand, creating the awareness about your brand more specifically, whether it be personal or corporate, the awareness that you're trying to build will always create some level of responsibility, because you are sharing naturally who it is that you are and why it is that you're doing what you're doing. And if you're wanting to grow, if you're wanting to make sure that you are leveling up within your brand, well, then you need to adhere to the idea of representation, and you need to adhere to the idea of helping others to see that there is a way forwards, so they also get it and they also do the same. The journey needs to start from somewhere. People are naturally seeing you doing so. So how do you help them to feel represented in the first place? How do you help to make sure that the next person coming up doesn't get a door slammed in their face, or the next person coming up knows that, oh my gosh, I have so many possibilities? Especially in this day and age, possibilities, or the likelihood of having a possibility to be able to move forwards in a way to reflect a dream, to reflect a higher position, to level up. As we know, things are crazy right now. So to be able to just show the human side of you, to be able to show that there is a way forward, to be able to show that, yeah, this can happen. Just because I'm me does not mean that it cannot happen for you too. Representation goes so far deep, even more than what you're probably thinking that it does. Representation covers age, it covers race, it covers cultural differences, it covers ethnicities, it covers sexual orientation, it covers so much. Even down to education, as well as work experience, as well as your geographical region. And what you may or may not have will determine whether or not the other person seeing you can also figure out the fact that what you may or may not have does not mean that it cannot happen. It meaning the opportunity. So, by way of representation, how are you making sure that opportunities can be had by all who choose to listen, right? But those who choose to listen can only choose to listen if they see themselves in the first place, if they see themselves in that reflection, if they see themselves by way of diversity, if they see themselves by way of space. Remember that video I shared previously to this, right? Go back again and watch that, because you'll be able to get exactly why I'm saying those three key things specifically. But now let's really focus on the impact that it has when a person doesn't feel represented. There's three key things once again. When you're talking about the idea of self, people have a way of really deep diving into the emotion as to what it is that they're not seeing enough of, right? If they don't see enough of themselves, if they also don't see enough of a certain group, a certain ethnicity, well then, unfortunately, the hidden impacts are as follows. Number one, it's going to create an idea of self-doubt, exclusion. If people don't see more of a specific group, if people don't see more of a specific opportunity where a specific group is being, creating that opportunity or equally being empowered by the opportunity, well then others won't get it. They won't understand why you, for example, need to be in a specific space. You, for example, need to be seen on certain platforms where others can now see that there is a way forwards. They won't get it. So how are you making sure that this level of underrepresentation, in fact, stops? How are you making sure that by way of your brand and by way of your brand awareness, the cause that you are fighting for, the cause that you are standing up for, the cause that you are making sure gets made aware of, by way of your product, by way of your service, by way of however it is that you actually help people, how are you making sure that this idea of underrepresentation stops? How can you make sure that you're flipping the idea of self-doubt? How can you make sure that you're also flipping the idea of possibility once again? Now, the other thing that it impacts is the idea of limitations. Now, already there is quite a lot of talk around the idea of feeling limited and not limitless. Now, yes, we know there are so many gurus out here and there's so many coaches and mentors sharing the idea of feeling limitless and how you can make sure that you do that, right? But my question is, how are you representing that part? If there isn't a level of representation to show limitless feelings or limitless actions, how is that going to impact the audience? If they don't feel it in the first place, if they don't see it in the first place, the idea of limitless becomes limited. Now, I'm sure it's a bit of a tongue twister and it's a bit confusing in that respect. However, here's what I really want you to pay attention to and really think about the idea of perception. Now, as you know, this is one of the actions or the principles that I have within my system, right? The principle of perception, the way how people are perceiving you, the way how people are looking at you. That idea, more specifically, really empowers the idea of limitations. If you are being perceived as this go-to expert, well then that creates a level of limitless feeling that you know that you can continue to adhere to. If you're experiencing things where perceptions of you, where people have already made up the story behind who you are, they've just simply by looking at you, they've limited who you are. They put a limit on that. They put a cap on that. And sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of people really pay attention to what that cap is or what that limit is. And my argument to you is, how are you making sure that that doesn't happen when it comes to your brand? How are you making sure that anybody who comes across your table, anybody who is seen in your space, anybody who is seen in your platform, on your platform, and more specifically talking to you, really recreates the idea of feeling limitless? Perception, as we know, is key. And with perception in mind, you're going to be able to know that, you know what, this is how I make sure that I stand out. And this is how I make sure others equally also know that they can also stand out. And their race and their gender and their sexual orientation and their whatever it is that they are, their ethnicity or their cultural background, will not be at the forefront of any kind of negativity. So how can you make sure that any limited perception stops? And again, when I talk about limited perceptions, I'm also going to be talking about this particular impact, which is the idea of stereotypes. Limited perceptions can always lead to stereotypes. When you stereotype somebody, meaning that you put them in a category simply because you've seen way too many images that look like this person that really represent, unfortunately, the look of this person, and so that means that I'm going to put them into that box. Let's stop that. For somebody who's been on the receiving end from one too many stereotypes, let's cut that out. Black, female, entrepreneur, and then some. Okay, all of those have had their own boxes of stereotypes. Yes, I've been on the receiving end of them, but here's what I always make sure that I am now doing. I'm making sure that each and every one of those boxes, those lids are being lifted off, and each and every one of those boxes I'm no longer being a part of, simply because I'm helping others to see that there is not only a way forwards, but equally to see that, guess what, I'm a Black female entrepreneur who's doing amazing things. And at the same time, with those amazing things, yes, I have met my challenges. I'm not going to lie about that at all, because it's life, right? However, with those amazing things, I'm making sure that I'm still continuing to show up, regardless of challenges, regardless of impact, regardless of what has happened to me. Yes, it has happened to me, but guess what? There are other things for me. And I'm helping others to know that there are other things for them, regardless of impact, regardless of challenges. Unfortunately, the way of the world comes with challenges and impacts, right? But it's how we deal with them and how we move forwards to make sure that we still continue on this mission of how we are helping others to move forwards. Representation, and all that it literally represents, is the idea of possibility and helping others to move forwards. Like, I've shared this story before, in the sense where one of the reasons where my mission is to help others to see that they are more than what they see is because at one point I didn't see that myself. And without knowing what that was, it took an outsider who saw me, somebody that looked like them, on stage, on a higher platform, leveling up in that respect, realizing that they also needed to do the same. I'm representing so much more than what than the branding work that I do for my clients. The same question or the same thing goes to you. You are representing so much more, even when you don't even think about it, don't even feel like you are, and yet you're just dealing with the surface level of what it is that you're doing. You are representing so much more than what it is that you think. You're representing perhaps the working class, you're representing perhaps your gender, you're representing perhaps your age, you're representing perhaps your ethnicity, your cultural, your cultural background, your sexual orientation, your work experience, as well as education. You are representing so much more than what you think. So, when somebody asks you, are you representing your audience? Really think back to the points that I've shared with you, not only here, but in my previous video already, but also really think back to how you're making sure that your brand creates a level of representation that others need to see more of. So I'm going to leave it there, folks. I want to make sure that in order to be able to create that representation that others need to see more of, you are also paying attention to these key principles. Now, these key principles, by the way, can be accessed by way of the first link that you come to in my description box below this video. Now, once you click on that link, you'll be asked just a few details, but I need those details in order to be able to send you over these key principles. Now, with these principles is what's going to be able to make sure that you level up when it comes to representing who it is that you are, what it is that you stand for, but equally how you make those better connections to start creating that level of growth that you're looking for. Now, when you do that, you will start seeing changes. You will start noticing things are different simply because you changed your attitude, your approach, and the way that you're actually building up the awareness of who it is that you are and why it is that you really do what you do. So folks, make sure you go ahead and get your principles. Make sure you also go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you on the other side.